What's up, people at Miami? Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Canes. We bring in the Wholesome One. He is Dwayne Holloway. You can join him right here on YouTube at the Wholesome One. Dwayne, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Things aren't looking too good for my Canes, but I'm doing all right.
So when I use the term upheaval, that might be a little bit overstated, but there's certainly some defections on the recruiting path. And of course, now let's start with the big news of the day, because there's a news conference coming up at 3 o'clock Eastern time, this being on Thursday, depending on when people are watching this. Manny Diaz, your defensive coordinator and linebackers coach for the past 3 seasons, who has elevated the play on that side of the ball, moving on to become a head coach at Temple. Your thoughts?
First of all, I'm very excited for him. Somebody who is an aspiring coach myself, when jobs like that open up, it isn't top-notch D1 by any means, but every coordinator wants to be a head coach at some point. And he has done so much for this program as far as bringing back that energy on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, the turnover chain that everybody, you either love or you hate. But a lot of people loved it, especially the first year it came out. Last year was a big thing. Not so much this year. But at the end of the day, it's something that you have to appreciate what he was able to do for us. And to be able to send him off to Temple, not necessarily the right way in my eyes as far as how disappointing the season was. But for him to be able to get a head coaching job, selfishly, I'm a little hurt because I want him to stay and coach the bowl game, because that's a big game for us after they, kind of put a whipping to us last year. But for him to do something good for himself and for us to be the type of program to be able to do that for him, I appreciated that and what he's done for the U.
So when we look at his tenure at Miami, 2016, 17, and 18, certainly a marked improvement from what the defense did prior to him arriving. You mentioned last year's storyline being highlighted in neon lights by the turnover chain. And that's what people gravitated to. And it wasn't just a turnover chain. It was a turnover chain that was used over and over and over, as I believe Miami either led or was second in the nation in turnovers on defense. So the defensive performance this year, not gaining as much acclaim, but number 2 in total defense in the nation. And of course, this metric is yards allowed, number 1 in pass defense, 3rd in yards per play given up. I think that's a key number right there, because you can't always control how many plays that the other team runs depending on the style of offense. And of course, a lot of teams that are really good give up garbage yardage in the 4th quarter because they're winning by 25 or 30 points. But number 3 in yards per play given up out of 130 FBS teams, and number 15 in scoring defense. So maybe the defense, I'm thinking, it had a bigger impact last year because it made game-changing plays, turnover plays more frequently last year, but the defensive consistency this year was really good as well.
Yes, and I completely agree with this year's defense. We didn't have the glit and the glamour, but if you look at it numerically, we're better this year than we were last year in every statistical category, especially total defense. I know last year we had a lot of problems with the run and big plays. And, towards the end of the season, those last 3 games, it didn't even look like the same team, let alone the same defense. But this year you had Coach Manny Diaz put into a really hard position with being given a short field a lot by that bad offense the first half of the season, majority of the entire season. But it takes me back to the LSU game. It takes me back to the Virginia debacle. It takes me back to Boston College, to where I see a defense playing way too many snaps, but still not giving up lots and lots of points. I believe LSU scored the most on us, but that's with 4 drives within their own 30-yard line. So that played a huge part in it also. But like I said, man, Manny Diaz, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I'm just happy for him. He's a younger guy, he's not too old. And we all know that the University of Miami, when it comes to holding on to coaches, we're usually not too good at that. They come here, they do good for a couple years, and they go off. Even our best coaches have left us. So for us to be able to give Manny that platform on a big stage to do it for his hometown and do it the way that he did it in such a great way, representing us, being a Miami guy, just happy for him. Just really, really happy for him.
We're joined by the Wholesome One. You can catch his YouTube channel right here. The Wholesome One, Miami football coverage from Dwayne Holloway, talking Manny Diaz's departure to Temple, which is going to be officially announced later today. Also, the bowl game prep and the recruiting with National Signing Day just 6 days away. So a few more things on Diaz. Beyond the numbers, as we alluded to with the turnovers, and the turnovers are just part of it. I have to think that Manny Diaz, his lasting legacy is going to be the turnover chain, because that's going to be the first thing that comes to mind. But in regards to hardcore football analysis, beyond the numbers and what the numbers represent, is more aggressive style, making disruptive plays in the backfield, being an attacking defense, taking advantage of the speed advantage that Miami had over most teams, and really providing that attacking defense. And then hopefully, I'm going to guess that the decision toward the hiring process is going to be, we need to get somebody that's not a clone of Manny Diaz in regards to personality and all those things. Every man has to be his own man, but is going to keep us on the path of playing what Miami defense has been established and founded on for generations. And that's owning the line of scrimmage and making disruptive plays in the backfield.
Correct. I 100% agree with that. And from the names that are getting thrown around, I would love to see Randy Shannon be able to come back and show what he was able to do in the late 90s. And, well, he kind of was there for a really long time. But from the mid-90s, because he coached Ray Lewis, so mid-90s up into the early 2000s as just a defensive coordinator, I would love to see him come back and be able to rewrite what he did back then, because around that time, Miami had the same mindset when it came to playing defensive football. Aggressive, hard-nosed. You know, we were putting guys in the NFL left and right, but he was also head of recruiting. So that helped a lot too. And I know him at UCF, and him also suing the University of Miami over the last couple of years because we didn't complete his buyout and things of that nature, might hinder him from becoming a defensive coordinator. And also having a previous head coach with a guy like Mark Richt, who's kind of I wouldn't say dictator because I don't want to get exiled, but he has his way of thinking, and everyone should be on his way of thinking. Him and Randy Shannon might butt heads, but I think for the betterment and the future of University of Miami, bringing a guy like Randy Shannon home would be to go from Manny Diaz to Randy Shannon would be a great 1-2 punch in my eyes.
We're talking about Miami football with the Wholesome One. You got to catch his football analysis and his take on Miami football. I don't know how busy you are. Well, I do know how busy you are these days, the Wholesome One, so I haven't kept track exactly in recent weeks of how much productivity you've had on your YouTube channel. But even if you haven't recently, I still encourage people to get over there because definitely people like to backlog and look at maybe some certain perspective on the season and things that have happened in the past to see. But definitely the Wholesome One provides some great Miami analysis and perspective that's all his own. So in regards to what we can find on your channel right now, what would that be, Wholesome One?
Well, the last thing on my channel is actually the It's Hate Week. Was my last video, was the video before the Florida State game. That was my last video that I uploaded. Reason being, of course, me and you have talked personally. Got accepted into Arizona State's graduate school. So that's what I've been trying to focus on and making sure everything's handled with that. That's where I'll probably be attending this upcoming fall. Also trying to get on as a graduate assistant with the football program. So just been working on that and getting whatever paperwork and letters of recommendation and things of that nature done. So that is why I've been very absent from YouTube because I don't want a particular phrase or term that I use in a YouTube video to come back and bite me, later on. So that's why I'm not necessarily scared to say anything, just very careful and mindful of what I say. And a lot of the things that I put on YouTube before is very emotional. That's just how I am as a Hurricane fan because I know how it should be done. I watched it. I might not have been old enough to really understand what was going on, but being, as you had said before, being a part of media, you have to know the history of your program. And this program has greatness in its history. And it's been glimpses over the last 20 years, but it hasn't been anything consistent. And I know what I bring to YouTube is very energetic, it's very fiery, but it's filled with emotion, mixed with some statistics. I was a huge stat guy at the beginning when I first started, but now I'm more of what does the film say about a player as opposed to what I think they will do. So, which is kind of a great segue in what you said, because I went back over the last week and wrote down a lot of notes of the people who I said watch out for and things of that nature. And a lot of those guys showed up, and I'm pretty happy about my great hypothesis before the season. Not necessarily the record of 11-1, but the players who I thought would show up and make big time plays, they actually did this season, and I'm pretty happy about that analysis I was able to make before the season started.